Plan is to take a look at Ezra 5 and 6, but before we do that, I got a couple of housekeeping things for you. First of all, gosh, I have to sit here and look at myself the whole time. That's amazing. I'm going to make you guys look at yourself over here, too, so there you go. Yeah. I can't have that in my line of sight, or I'm not going to have any concentration at all tonight. A couple of housekeeping things. First of all, if you've been watching the news, what we've been talking about here and what's going on in the news, we're having the exact same conversation. The war that's going on between the Palestinians and the Israelis right now is this conflict. Just trade out the word Palestinian for Samaritan and Israeli for Israelite, and it's the same fight. So any of that stuff that you've been hearing, it's all fights that have been going on for 2,500 years. And it's just kind of amazing how ingrained hatred can be after all that time. But so that's one of the. There aren't many things that you can see going on that you can say, well, we studied that in the Old Testament. Here it is right here. So it's a little bit of a different take on it. But I have a little bit of a timeline here I wanted to look at here tonight, just real quick, to kind of help put some of these kings in order. Because they're referencing back and forth, and we're going to see people writing letters and searching archives, and maybe we'll read a little bit first, and then I'll try to help clear it up with that. Because what's going to happen is one king said, go ahead and do this. The next king said, go ahead and stop doing this. And then about 2 or 3 kings later, somebody's going to come back and say, nah, the first king said we should do this, we probably should do it. And then they're going to kind of backtrack and turn in circles and different things. So, but that's what we're going to look at here this evening. So, do I have any, man, everybody tell your face you're happy to be here. Because I cannot look at this all night, okay? I can't look at this all night. Okay, don't make me look at that all night because I can't do it. All right. Yeah, something. Just. I don't care if you're happy to be here tonight, but I want you to look happy you're here. So. Okay. All right. Because yeah, I had a busy day. Actually, a little piece of housekeeping. Did you guys hear they're doing they're opening live theater down at the theater? Yeah, the Grand Opera House down here. You guys hear that? The Ditchman is coming up, play written by Joe Ginter, and it's coming up last Sunday of this month and first Sunday of next month, 7 o'clock. They're going to have a thing down there if any of you want to go. I'm only telling you this because I don't want you to say, why did you tell us? I have the lead role in the play, so I'm the one trying to figure out who the Ditchmen are, and there's a bunch of stuff that's going on there, working hard on that one. So if you're interested in going, you get your tickets on the theater website. And I also got an email literally minutes before coming down here that I also was cast, they're doing the Christmas Carol, and I was cast as Bob Cratchit in that play. So I get to go get yelled at by Ebenezer Scrooge. How good my day is going right there. So, but yeah, so, and there'll be more information coming out about that later. But so just doing some stuff in the theater down there, and there are still some open parts left if you're interested. I'm just letting you know. So. They're looking for a Mrs. Fezziwig, I believe. Yeah, so anyways. So for what it's worth. All right. And because I don't want this to be over and everybody be like, why do you tell us? Well, I told you. The other thing I want to ask you to pray for, because we're talking, obviously, with Ezra Nehemiah, we're always talking about building, because Ezra and Nehemiah are always building something. I was going to go tomorrow. I decided I'm not going tomorrow. I'm going to go Friday. The Global Methodist Church Conference is going on this weekend, so I'm going down Friday morning to the actual meet. The pre-meeting is tomorrow. I've decided to skip that because I just have too much going on. So I will be there Friday and half a day Saturday, and they're going to be going through some. I just want to go down and see it. I want to go down and I'll have a brief report on Sunday, and then there'll be some more information coming out over the next couple of weeks. But if you guys have any questions, now, anything you want me to watch for or whatever, I would love to know that, and then. If there's any questions you have over the next couple of weeks, because we'll be voting. Looks like we'll be voting on November the 5th at that meeting as to whether we want to stay independent or we want to go global or we want to postpone see how things go. All those options are on the table. So just a little thought about that. Anybody have any questions about the November 5th meeting at all? Anything about it? Keep in mind, I'm still stuck on how you got part of Bob. I know. I was thinking Ghost of Christmas Present is what I was thinking, but that's not the way they went. Yeah. Because he's really passive and stuff, and I guess I'm that way. So. Yeah, we have to work on that one. You guys, if I can pull that off, you'll know that I have acting chops. So yeah, I'm actually surprised they didn't make me Ghost of Christmas Future. That's what I was figured they were going to do. But so yeah. But anyways, anything about that, we could talk about those things and as well. All right, let's come up here to Ezra. We're going to do Ezra chapter 5 and 6 tonight, if we get that far, and that is my plan. So if you just bring all of you up to speed. The Ezra and crew arrive in town. They begin working on the temple. Things are going well. Some people from outside of Jerusalem think they won't permit them to come and help. So they get upset. They write letters. The king says, gosh, Jerusalem seems like kind of a rough place. Maybe we shouldn't do this. So he sends back a thing that says, tell them to stop. And Rehum, the kind of guy in charge there, the political leader, says, got to stop. So they stopped. So that's where we are. So if we we're going to read chapter 5, but we're going to start, the last verse of chapter 4 says, the work on the temple of God in Jerusalem stopped and remained at a standstill until the second year of the reign of King Darius. So the guy who gave the gag order, that king was Artaxerxes, right? Okay, so Artaxerxes ruled around the year 465 BC. So we're looking, none of you were alive at that point, were you? I didn't want to assume anything. So, so 465 BC, he reigned for about 40 years. So he had a good long reign, and he was the one that put a stop to it until Darius came to power a little bit later. So, and then, all right, so chapter 5. At that time, the prophets Haggai and Zechariah, son of Iddo, prophesy in the name of the God of Israel to the Jews in Judah and Jerusalem. Now, does Haggai and Zechariah sound familiar to anybody? They did something very significant in the Bible. Anybody know what they did? They were part of a very significant group of 12. They both have books of the Bible named after them. Now, the reason you didn't know that is because we never read from them. Okay, there are some of the books of the Bible that are a little, we'll say, eclectic. They're a little tough to get a bead on because they're written to a very specific situation. Haggai and Zechariah were both about rebuilding the temple, and there's not a lot. If you read their books, there's not a lot of. It's kind of like straight history. It'd be like me writing about the play down at the opera house. It'd be at the theater. It's something very specific. It's right now. And if 10 years from now you're reading and I'm saying, hey, I was cast as Bob Cratchit down in the play, okay, big deal. There's really nothing to do with that. I mean, it's something that happened. It's part of the time period. That's why we don't read from them very much, because a lot of other books of the Bible are timeless. However, Haggai and Zechariah, not so much. They're kind of in a historical context, and they can't really be divided from that. So that's one of the reasons why we don't read them very often. But those were the two major prophets who were working at that time. So Zerubbabel, son of Shealtiel, and Jeshua, son of Jehozadak, who are they? Now, we've read about them a couple times. But remember who these two guys are? Anybody remembers? I'm not even going to make you spell it. Let's let you look at your Bible. Remember, Zerubbabel was the king. And he was significant because why? He was a descendant of somebody whose name rhymed with Avid. Okay? I'll be as specific as I can for you guys, all right? Yes. So he was a descendant of King David. He was the guy that Cyrus put in charge because what they were looking for is they wanted a descendant from King David to be on the throne. That's all they wanted. Cyrus was like, I can do that. So he got somebody he could put his thumb on, and people were happy. I did a lot of reading about King Cyrus this week, and we may talk a little more about him as we go along. The guy was actually a genius, because one of the things that we talked about, the reason he was able to reinstate Judah and rebuild Jerusalem and rebuild the temple and all these things was because he conquered the Assyrians, who were the ones who were responsible for destroying it. So the Assyrians come in and destroyed everything. And I always thought it was interesting because they talked about how the Babylon, how Cyrus and the Persians came in and wiped out the Babylonians and kicked them all out and all those things. But you don't ever read much about the war that Cyrus, came in and kicked everybody out. I always thought that was interesting. I found it today. The reason you never read about it is because there wasn't one. They just surrendered to him. He came into town and not one person got in a fight, not anything. And the reason that he was able to do that is King Cyrus, and again, I didn't know this till today, he was the first person to put together I'm going to use these words lightly because these are buzzwords today, and I don't mean them the way they're used today. I mean them in the way they used to be used. He actually created a multicultural empire. Now, he didn't do it on purpose, but what he found is it's a lot better to negotiate with people than it is to kill them. That's what he figured out. And he actually wrote I don't know if this, I want to say a Bill of Rights, but he actually wrote out a thing that says, okay, if you want somebody's stuff, you have to pay them for it. You can't just go kill them and take it. We're going to be kind of sticklers about that one. And he said, if something happens and you're responsible for it, take responsibility. And the idea of communities. He actually is the first person we have record of creating such things. I'm not saying he was the first person to ever build a city, but the idea that people saw themselves as a part of a community rather than a bunch of individuals that lived in houses and kind of fended for themselves. King Cyrus was the one who figured that out. And the way he figured that out was because he realized, we have a big fighting force and we have a lot of guys with spears and horses and weapons and stuff. But it's actually better if you don't use that stuff because the less people you kill, the more people you have to help out when it's over. So he was really, honestly, way ahead of his time. Unfortunately for Cyrus, he only ruled for about 10 years. He didn't live very long because he was an older man once he got into power. The only unfortunate part for Cyrus is when Cyrus was no longer in power, his brother came to power, and his brother hadn't learned that lesson yet. His brother only wanted one thing in life. He wanted to conquer the Egyptians and steal all their money. Turns out empires aren't real thrilled with that arrangement, and that was lots of fighting. And they ended up going back to war after Cyrus's reign. But for the little while that Cyrus was in charge, he actually did a lot of stuff like we've talked about here. Okay, so you guys are telling me that if I can give you a king in the line of David and put him on the throne and help you do some work around your kingdom and give you back your land, you'll cooperate? That's all you want? And they're like, yeah, I can do that. I'll just get a king I know I can control, and I'll have a knife 1 inch from his throat, and as long as he does what I tell him to do and keep all y'all happy, works for me. Everybody got what they wanted. Now, I'm not 100% sure that the Israelites understood it that way, but that's how Cyrus did it. Saved, honestly, generations of lives by doing it that way. And again, guy was way ahead of his time. So I share that with you because I'm a history buff, and I have to make that seminary degree count for something once in a while. All right, so back to the question that we haven't answered yet. Zerubbabel was the descendant of David. He was the king, and Jeshua was the priest. So you basically had the secular leader, and you had the religious leader together. And so these two guys agree with what they're going to do, because back in those days, both of them were like two equal powers, not like today, where there's separation of church and state and all that nonsense. Back in those days, those two forces could work together. So Zerubbabel, son of Shealtiel, and Jeshua, son of Jehozadak, responded by beginning the task of rebuilding the temple of God in Jerusalem. And the prophets of God were with them and helped them, which would have been the two guys I just mentioned, Haggai and Zechariah. Okay, so how many verses in are we? 3? 3 verses in. Excellent. And in actually we're only 2 verses in. Verse 3, somebody's already mad. But Tatane, governor of the province west of the Euphrates River, and Shelter-Bozenah, and their colleagues soon arrived in Jerusalem and asked, "Who gave you permission to rebuild this temple and restore the structure?" I mean, honestly, second verse, same as the first. If you remember all the way back to last week, this is exactly what the other people were saying. Okay? This is exactly what they accused him of. Who licensed this? Who sanctioned this? Who said they could do it? And, and wrote restore the structure. Verse 4. They also asked for a list of names of all the people who were working on the temple. Gosh, I wonder why they wanted that. This is cancel culture. It's been around for a while. And by cancel in this culture, it means that's what cancel means. But because God was watching over them, the leaders of the Jews were not prevented from building until a report was sent to Darius and his decision, and he returned his decision. You can imagine that report, I bet, it was the most thorough report ever, and I bet it took years to get that report together. Because when you're doing a report, you can drag your feet forever. So when the report was finally together as to who was doing all this, they then send the letter. Tatanai's letter to King Darius, verse 6. This is a letter that Tatanai, the governor, Shebonzai, and the other officials of the province of the West. All right, this is what they sent to Darius, verse 7. Greetings to King Darius. We wish to inform you that we went to the construction site of the temple and the great God of the province of Judah. It is being rebuilt with specially prepared stones and timber being laid on its walls. The work is going forward with great energy and success. We asked the leaders, who gave you permission to build this temple and restore the structure? We demanded their names so we could tell you who the leaders were. What is this called? This has a name, we call it today. 2 words that start with T, and children do it all the time. Tattletale, it's exactly right. That is 100% what's going on here. Okay, so they sent the letter. That's what it said. All right, verse 11. This was their answer. And they're writing this in the letter. So they're telling King Darius, when we asked them this question, give us all the names, here's what they said. Verse 11. This was their answer. We are the servants of the God of heaven and earth, and we are rebuilding the temple that was built here many years ago by a great king of Israel. But because our ancestors angered the God of heaven, he abandoned them to Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, who destroyed the temple and exiled them to Babylonia. However, King Cyrus of Babylon, during the first year of his reign, now King Cyrus of Babylon, he's actually a Persian king. I don't know if that's a typo. I'm not sure what's going on there. First year of his reign, issued a decree that the temple of God should be rebuilt. So Cyrus said, yes, go ahead and go back and go rebuild it. Fine with me. King Cyrus returned the gold, silver utensils that Nebuchadnezzar had taken from the temple of God in Jerusalem and placed them in the temple of Babylon. These items were taken from that temple, meaning Nebuchadnezzar's temple, and delivered to safekeeping in a man named Sheshbazzar, whom King Cyrus appointed as governor of Judah. Okay. We've actually read all this happening, so they're just accounting what happened. Did I tell you last week, have you ever heard, did we talk last week, did anybody remember, writing on the wall? The story of the writing on, did we talk about that last week? Okay. That Nebuchadnezzar is where that phrase comes from. And what happened is Nebuchadnezzar one night, he gets a little tipsy, and he says to his buddies, hey guys, why don't we have a very special celebration tonight? I've got these cool cups and jars and glasses and pitchers and basins that came from this, this temple I conquered. And we'd like to get all that stuff out, and we could drink out of them and have a great old time. So they got all this stuff out, and they started drinking. They got really drunk. And then in the middle of the night, King Nebuchadnezzar saw a hand, like Cousin It, just a hand, writing on the wall. And he wrote 3 words, Mene, Mene, Tekel, Parsin. And those things mean you have been weighed, and you didn't measure up, and now you're dead. And that's essentially what happened. I don't know how drunk he was. You have to be pretty drunk, I'm assuming, to see something like that. But that's what he saw after drinking out of these cups here. And that's why Cyrus was like, well, we're clearly not going to drink out of them. You guys might as well have them back. And so they sent them back. Okay, so... but the phrase "read the writing on the wall" comes from that story. Lay the foundations. Okay, verse 17. So now, if it please the king, we request that you search the royal archives of Babylon to discover whether King Cyrus issued a decree to rebuild God's temple in Jerusalem, and let the king send us his decision in this matter. So, honestly, this is exactly what we would do today. They're going back to the minutes of the meeting to see if this was ever discussed and who discussed it and what was decided. So they're going back to do that check. So King Darius, he receives this letter, and he reads the request, and then he goes to check on it. So chapter 6, verse 1. So King Darius issued orders that a search be made to the Babylonian archives where the treasures were stored. He was at the fortress of Ekbanta in the province of Media, and the scroll was found, and it was said. So they roll the scrolls, and they found the place. Memorandum. In the first year of King Cyrus's reign, now remember, King Cyrus only reigned for 10 years, so not a terribly long time. Decree was sent out concerning the temple of God at Jerusalem. Okay, think about that. Cyrus came in, negotiated the surrender of the Babylonians, and one of the very first things the guy did was he found this group of people in there, and all they wanted to do was go home and have a certain king. So he wasn't screwing around. He wasn't wasting any time. He went directly to allowing them to have that. So he did this in the first year. I mean, again, that shows the guy was a diplomat through and through. And he told him to rebuild the temple as well, as we're about to read here. In the first year of King Cyrus's reign, a decree was sent out concerning the temple of God at Jerusalem. It must be rebuilt on the site where the Jews used to offer their sacrifices, retaining the original foundation. Its height will be 90 feet, with its width will also be 90 feet. Every 3 layers of specially prepared stones will be topped by a layer of timber. All expenses are to be paid by the royal treasury, and the gold and silver utensils, which were taken to Babylon by Nebuchadnezzar, from the temple of God in Jerusalem, will be taken back to Jerusalem and put in God's temple as they were before. Okay, so this is what they found in the. So this is, I mean, very interesting. It's actually an actual notation in the official archives of Babylon. And this is what was said. I mean, this was how it was recorded. So what they're saying is they said we want to know who it was. Well, right here, written proof that a king did say that this could go on. Okay, so I'm relatively confident as we read on here. We're going to find out that Tatane and the rest of them had him. You know, because no way the king ever said this was okay. Well, that's about to blow up in their face. Verse 6. So King Darius sent this message to Tatane, governor of the province west of the Euphrates River, and Shether-Boznai. I think I've said that different every time I read it. And to your colleagues and other officials west of the Euphrates. Stay away from there. Do not disturb the construction of the temple of God. All right, suppose you're Tatane, and you've cracked this whole plan, and that's the first sentence you read. Are you feeling good about life? No. Do not disturb the construction of the temple of God. Let it be rebuilt on its former site, and do not hinder the governor of Judah and the leaders of the Jews in their work. Moreover, this is what we call, it's about to get worse. I hereby decree that you are to help the leaders of the Jews to rebuild the temple of God. You must pay the full construction cost without delay from my taxes collected in your province, so the work will not be discontinued. I don't know what I can add to that, actually, so there it is. Give the priests in Jerusalem whatever is needed in the way of young bulls, rams, lambs for burnt offering presented to the God of heaven, and without fail, provide them with wheat, salt, wine, olive oil that they need each day. So Tatane sent this thinking he was going to stop it. Now he's collecting money for them, providing food for them, and providing agricultural pieces with them. Or pieces, provisions for them. So now he's feeding them and he's bankrolling them. I'm sure he's just happy with his life. Then they will be able to offer acceptable sacrifices to the God of heaven and pray for me and my sons. Why are we doing this? Because I would really like these guys who seem to have it really going on. I'd like to have their prayers on my behalf. Okay. And honestly, pretty good choice, really. All right, now, King Darius is not a dummy. He knew what the purpose of the letter was. He knew what they wanted to accomplish. He knew what they wanted to stop. So he also knew that what he's writing here is not going to be received with any kind of enthusiasm. Verse 11. Those who violate this decree in any way will have a beam pulled from their house. They'll be tied to it and flogged. And then their house will be a pile of rubble. Okay, so if you don't do this, not only are you going to get flogged, which is not great, but we're going to pull the central beam out of your house, and that's what we're going to tie you to, and we're going to beat you there. So not only are you going to end up with some scars from this, you're also going to knock down your house. Questions, anybody? Okay? Because I want to make sure I'm very clear about what I want done here.
So is flogged hanged? Because mine says hanged.
Does it say hang? No, flogged is beaten with like a, not really a whip. It's more of a thing, like a cat of nine tails kind of thing.
Mine says impaled.
Impaled? Oh, wow, that's even more serious than mine.
That's right.
Okay. All of that is bad, okay? All right? And, yeah, so we want to be really clear that you do not want to be in the way of this. And honestly, it's bad. I mean, I'm assuming getting hanged is bad, getting impaled is bad, getting flogged, probably not so great. Also, having your house fall down, probably not great either. Let's see here, verse 12. May the God who has chosen the city of Jerusalem as his place to honor his name, that is a statement right there, is it not? From a foreigner? Let me read that again. May the God with a capital G, this is Yahweh that our little friend here was just talking about. May the God who has chosen the city of Jerusalem as the place to honor his name destroy any king or nation that violates this command and destroys this temple. I, Darius, have issued this decree. Let it be obeyed with all diligence. Well, there it is. I don't know what else I can add to it. That did not work. All right, verse 13. Tatane, governor of the province west of the Euphrates River, and Shether-Bozenah and their colleagues complied at once with the command of King Darius. Anybody think that might be a tad overstated? I mean, they may have complied, but I don't think they were like, woohoo, take all our stuff. This is amazing. So, but clearly what this shows us, though, is that Tatane and crew understood who Darius was. He was not somebody to cross. Clearly, Darius, he was, I don't know as much about Darius as I do about Cyrus, because I just didn't read as much about him. But the fact that they went from, hey, you need to check this, to him saying, okay, I checked it, give him all the stuff and leave him alone, and they're like, okay, let's do that, means that Darius don't mess around. Because you all have been in situations where you've got somebody who's in charge, and they'll tell you what to do, and after a while, you kind of know. There are certain people, when they tell you what to do, you run to get it done. And other people tell you what to do, and you take it as a suggestion. You know the difference I'm talking about, right? Don't any of you make any comments or look around this room at all, but you know what I'm saying, okay? But that's what it is. And you know that somebody, and you know the scary people. When scary people come at you and say, I want this done, it probably gets done. Because, and Darius apparently was one of those people. Okay. Let's see here. Complied at once to the command of King Darius, verse 14. So the Jewish leaders continued their work, and they were greatly encouraged by the preaching of the prophets Haggai and Zechariah, son of Iddo. Again, if you go read the books of Haggai and Zechariah, you can tell there's a lot of excitement in what they have to say, but you're going to have a hard time applying it to life today because it's written to a very specific circumstance. Does that make sense? It'd be like reading somebody who was reading the pep talk they gave the soldiers at Gettysburg, okay? You can understand why that would be a very exciting thing for them, but it doesn't translate to where we are today because obviously we're not charging to our deaths across the battlefield, okay? So again, and when you read Haggai and Zechariah, you'll get that same feeling. Let's see. The temple was finally finished, as had been commanded by the God of Israel and decreed by Cyrus, Darius, Artaxerxes, the kings of Persia. The temple was completed on March the 12th. Anybody have a different date there? A Hebrew date?
Yeah, third day of the month.
Yeah. So that's the Hebrew calendar, and the New Living Translations uses the Anglo-Saxon calendar. March 12th, during the 6th year of King Darius' reign. The temple of God was then dedicated with great joy by the people of Israel, the priests, the Levites, and the rest of the people who returned from exile. During the dedication ceremony for the temple of God, 100 young bulls, 200 rams, 400 lambs were sacrificed. All right, let's look at those numbers. 100 young bulls, 200 rams, 400 lambs. I must ask you, where did these animals come from? Where'd they come from, Jack? That's right. The guys who tried to stop us have to give us stuff, so we're killing everything today. We're going to have lots of sacrifices, and we're going to need all this stuff. I can't say for certain that this is a rubbing it in moment, but I can't say it's not. So, all right, very good. All right, verse 18. And the priests and Levites were divided in their various divisions to serve the temple of God in Jerusalem, following all the instructions in the book of Moses. Okay. So, all right, so temple is back. Sacrifices are back. Darius, at least for the moment, has settled down the opposition. Everything's kind of going good, and we're now coming up on our first celebration of Passover. And just for to those of us who are new here, somebody tell me what Passover celebrates what? Anybody remember?
The angel of death passing over.
That's right. Of the 10 plagues of Moses when they got him out of Egypt, the Passover celebrates plague number 10, which was the death of the firstborn. And what they had to do was put the lamb's blood on the door. I mean, you've all heard the story. And Passover celebrates that event because that was the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back. That was this. Because finally now Pharaoh was like, you guys just go. Just get out. And that led into the Red Sea, and it didn't go well from there. So, okay, on April the 21st, all right, who's got a Hebrew date on that one? 14th day of the first month, a.k.a. April 21st. I don't know why. That's just what they say. The exiles returned the returned exiles celebrated Passover. The priests and Levites had purified themselves, were ceremonially clean. That detail is there to tell us, yep, they're reading the book. They're reading Deuteronomy and Leviticus and making sure they're doing things right. They slaughtered the Passover lamb for all the returned exiles and all the other priests and for themselves. Again, you can go back, look at Leviticus. All that is explained on how that's supposed to happen. The Passover meal was eaten by the people of Israel who had returned from exile by the others in the land and who had turned from their immoral customs to worship the Lord, the God of Israel. Basically, that just simply means that there was some, what do I want to say, pagan practices that were mixing in, and they made great pains to get that out. And we're going to see that illustrated much, much clearer in the book of Nehemiah. Nehemiah was really a stickler on this stuff. And once we get that far, we'll read about that. There was great joy throughout the land because the Lord had changed the attitude of the king of Assyria toward them. So he helped them rebuild the temple of God, the God of Israel. And I would say that may be a mild understatement to say that he turned the tide because, so what happened is the first guy, Cyrus, said, build it. Then Artaxerxes came up and said, stop it. It was stopped for a period of time. Okay. It was declared to be stopped for a period of time. I'm not 100% sure it completely stopped because they were very dedicated to get this building back. So they continued building, and another letter was sent by Tatane to say, hey, King, are you sure this is what you want? The king checked the record. Turns out that 2 or 3 kings ago said it was supposed to happen, and Darius made it very clear that that's what I expect to happen. I expect that building to come back. So, there it is. All right. Man, we made record times here. Yeah.
Does that verse 21 mean then that the returned Jews
Yep.
allowed some of the Jews who were still there to join them in the Passover?
Absolutely not. Because if you ask those people, they would tell you there were no Jews left here. Now, the other guys might have a little different opinion about that, but that's what they would say. The people who were left in the land they were not, since they weren't part of the exile, they're now not part of our group. Same fight going on right now. Who's in and who's out. Who deserves what, who gets what, who's entitled to what. That's, they're now raping and killing right now in the name of that still. So, yeah. And what verse 21 means is that they actually is the exact opposite of that. Is some of the practices that were left in the land, those were what they were purging out. The practices were being purged out, and the people had to go with them. And again, we're going to see that, if we get that far, we're going to see that very, very clearly. Nehemiah he was a hawk on this. So, all right. We probably have time for one more chapter. You guys want to do chapter 7? All right. I haven't done anything with it yet, but this might get us up to Nehemiah then for next week. Or back to Nehemiah, I should say. All right. Here is Pastor Tim having done no preparation. Here we go. Chapter 7. All right, many years later. So notice that. We're getting kind of a time jump. We're going forward in time. During the reign of King Artaxerxes of Persia, there was a man named Ezra. He was the son of Sariah, son of Azariah, son of Hilkiah, son of Shallum, son of Zadok, son of Atib. Okay, blah, 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 blah. Son of Eleazar, son of Aaron. You see that? Who's Aaron? Remember who Aaron is? Moses' brother. It's exactly right. He was the first priest. All the priests are descended of Aaron. So you could search that down there. In fact, there's a few guys on that, few names on here that we'll know. Eleazar, if I remember correctly, he wasn't a very good guy. Phinehas, we see him show up a few times. I'm trying to see some other names that we recognize. Zadok comes up in a couple different places with different things. But okay, now that lineage that's there means everything to a person. That's how you identify it. And how many generations back is that? Let's see. A person, man named Ezra. So we got Ezra, and then his father, grandfather, great. 6, 7, 8. What is that? 12, 13, 14, 15? Almost 16. Is that right? 16? 16 generations. How many of you could tell me the name of your great-grandfather? I expected a couple of you to be able to, but I'm assuming not many of you. And if I said great-great, you feeling that one? Great-great-great? How many greats can you go back? 4. All right. That's a little short of 16, but yeah. But that's a long way back. I barely remember my grandparents just because of circumstances in my family. They died when I was very young, but we don't have lineage like that. Because you're talking 16 generations, you're getting back, 300 or 400 years almost. And that's how far back they're going. And the reason that's important is because that's how you verify who you belong to. Now, we have a wholly different way of doing that today. Do you know how we do it today? What do we have today? No, I was thinking, how many of you got one of these things? Okay. If I had to prove who I am, what's the first thing they want to see? Okay, but they didn't have these in those days. But this takes the place of that sentence. That sentence would be the equivalent of Ezra's driver's license. Okay? Because that's how you prove who you were. And without it, you have no identity. You can come on in here, kid. You have no identity and you have nowhere to belong. And because who we belong to is so important, that's why they kept track of this. Again, we're going to see that when we get to Nehemiah, because he was big on this. Okay, verse 6. This Ezra was a scribe, well versed in the law of Moses, which the Lord, the God of Israel, had given to the people of Israel. He came up to Jerusalem from Babylon, and the king gave him everything he asked for, because the gracious hand of the Lord his God was on him. Some of the people of Israel, as well as some of the priests, Levites, singers, gatekeepers, and temple servants, traveled up to Jerusalem with him in the 7th year of King Artaxerxes. Does this writing style, and again, remember, this has been translated umpteen times, does what's written here sound different than what we were reading just in the previous chapter? Does it sound different in the way it's written? I mean, it's an opinion question. You can say no. But to me, it does sound different, because if you ask me, what we've read up till now sounds like a history book. This sounds like the story of Ezra. Okay, doesn't it? I mean, Ezra's going to be the character we're going to follow and what he does here. Chances are this is probably a different person, a different writer. But at some point, as the scribes were copying and recopying this story, somebody had a longer scroll, so they put these two together. All right, and that's probably how we ended up with Ezra as we have it today.
I got a question. Wasn't this the same king that put a stop to the building?
Yes, it was.
Are we
Yeah,
going back in
yes,
time?
yeah. One of the things, I love the Bible dearly. One of the things the Bible does not care about are timelines. It doesn't care about them at all. So yes, we're jumping backward in time, which is why I suspect this is a different book. Not a different story, but it's a different writer here. Okay, and that's why.
So this whole thing should probably go.
Oh yeah,
Chapter 6.
yeah, right, yeah. It probably should go. Actually, it probably should not even be a part of the same book. It probably should be like Ezra, second Ezra or something. But because they had a longer scroll, they put it all together. So, but yes, yeah, that's one thing in the Bible you need to be careful about. A couple of you have mentioned that the Bible does not care about timelines at all. So that's why when you read the Gospels and you say, well, you know, gosh, Luke says this, Matthew says that. Yeah, they weren't worried about the order of events. They didn't worry about those things. Okay, let's see. All right, so verse 8. Ezra arrived in Jerusalem in August of that year. He left Babylon on April the 8th and came to Jerusalem on August the 4th. And I'm assuming your Hebrew dates are all different there. The gracious hand of the God was on him, and because Ezra determined to study and obey the law of the Lord and teach those laws and regulations to the people of Israel. Okay? And he came with a letter. King Artaxerxes had given a copy of the following letter to Ezra, the priest and scribe, who studied the commands of the laws of the Lord. Can Tim read English? Taught the commands and laws of the Lord to Israel. Greetings from Artaxerxes, the king of kings, which is an interesting statement. Notice both K's are lowercase. King of kings, to Ezra, the priest, teacher of the law, and the God of heaven. I decree that any people of Israel in my kingdom, including priests and Levites, may volunteer to return to Jerusalem with you. Now remember, Artaxerxes didn't decide to stop this building until a little later in the process. So he allowed this to go on, which means originally he allowed them to go. And he's saying, take with you. You guys need something? Okay. Huh? Oh, they're here to see you? Okay. They're here to... it's going to come back, my train of thought. He allowed them to go, and what he said, you could take all the priests, Levites, temple workers, whatever else. Anybody who wants to go can go back. Till he changed his mind, this is what was allowed. Let's see. Now, I want you to notice something here in this very next verse. Let's start in verse 14, and then watch what happens in verse 15. I am my council of 7. Let's just stop there. I am my council of 7. What do we notice there? You guys need to go. Yeah. Thanks for coming. I am my council of 7. Who wrote this? Who wrote that? Who wrote these words? Who wrote them? In the book of Ezra, if I say I in the council of 7, who wrote it? Ezra. Okay. Remember how we were looking at the memoirs of Nehemiah? Well, this is probably the memoirs of Ezra, which is why the timeline changed. Because this is probably written in Ezra's own hand, where the other one was an official account.
Mine says, you are sent by the king and his 7 advisors.
Yeah. But let's get down to, let's see what the next verse says. I am my council of 7, hereby instruct you to conduct an inquiry into the situation in Jerusalem based on your God's law, which is in your hand. You don't have any of the pronouns that sound like that? The yous?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. We also commission you to take with you some silver and gold, which we are freely presenting as an offering to the God of Israel who lives in Jerusalem. Now, based on what we read in the previous part, what silver and gold do you think we're talking about here? I just said it. The temple stuff, right? The basins and the pitchers and the cups and all this stuff. So that's what he gave him back to take in. Moreover, you're to take any silver and gold which you obtain for the province of Babylon, as well as the freewill offerings of the people and the priests that are presented for the temple of their God in Jerusalem. These donations are to be used specific. Moreover, you take any silver and gold which you may obtain from the province of Babylon, as well as the freewill offerings of the people and the priests that are presented for the temple of their God in Jerusalem. The people and priests that are presented for the temple of their God in Jerusalem. Wow. So the second part of that verse, where did those offerings come from? As well, okay, the first part comes from Babylon. Take any silver and gold that we basically take what we stole from you, you have it all back. But the second part says, as well as the free will offerings of the people and the priests that are presented for the temple of their God in Jerusalem. I may be reading that wrong, but that sounds to me like these offerings are coming from the people who are left there. The ones who are about to get really angry. So whatever offerings that they're collecting in that church, go ahead and kick them out and take their money. I can't imagine why they're mad. You know? So maybe I'm not reading that right, but that's what it sounds like to me. These donations are to be used specifically for the purchase of bulls, rams, lambs, and the grain offerings and drink offerings, all of which will be offered in the altar of the temple of the Lord your God. This is Ezra's account of what happened when Tatane's letter was responded to. It's the same thing. Because basically Tatane said this, or Darius said the same thing. You know, not only don't stop them, but give them stuff. Well, this is Ezra saying, here's what they gave us. Any money that's left over may be used in whatever way you wish, and your colleagues, whatever way you and your colleagues feel is the will of your God. But as for the utensils we are trusting for you in the service of the temple of your God, deliver them in full to the God of Jerusalem. If you run short of money for anything necessary for your God's temple, or any similar needs, you may requisition funds from the royal treasury. Pretty much the same thing as was said before. We don't have Tatane's letter in here, but Ezra probably didn't really care about that. He just cared about what he got from it. I, Artaxerxes the king, hereby send this decree to all the treasurers in the province west of the Euphrates River. All right, here's where we're going to run into problems.
You know that whole thing about providing the silver and stuff, it's the same thing that was accounted for in verse 1, or chapter 1.
Yep.
It's the same account.
Yep.
That people there.
Which means the first one is the official count. The second one is just Ezra recording the same information.
Yeah, it's the same information.
Yep.
The people there to provide gold,
Yep.
silver, and livestock. And
Yep. And actually, we're about to find out that they're going to give him even more stuff. It's interesting that Darius commanded them to give him, the food and the agriculture and the animals, and we didn't really know exactly how much that was. So they get to that big sacrifice at the end. Ezra remembered how much it was. Here we're going to read about that. You are to give Ezra whatever he requests for you, for he is a priest and teacher of the law of the God of heaven. Verse 22. You're to give him up to 7,500 pounds of silver, 500 bushels of wheat, 550 gallons of wine, 550 gallons of olive oil, and an unlimited supply of salt. That's a lot. And remember, if you go back and look earlier in this chapter, let me make sure I'm telling you right here. I basically invited people to go with him. I was thinking he didn't have very many people go with him at this point. Anyways, so they're going to provide all this stuff to him. Verse 23. Be careful to provide whatever the God of heaven demands for his temple, for why should we risk bringing God's anger against the realm and the king and his sons? I also decree that no priest, Levite, singer, gatekeeper, temple servant, or other worker in this temple will be required to pay taxes of any kind. It's a pretty bold statement from a foreign king. I think you all would agree. But this is how Ezra remembered it. And it's interesting that he celebrated it in this way. Because it would be really difficult to argue with the fact that God was blessing them when this is happening. Because remember, they've been exiled for generations, and now they're coming back with the blessing of God and the blessing of the king.
I've mentioned before the chronology is the Ezra in this chapter, Ezra as in the earlier chapter.
Yes, I'm assuming so, yes. Yeah. What we have is we have the... Here is theory according to Tim. Chapters 1 through 6 are the official record, the official historical record. 7 through, I don't think it goes clear through the end of the book, but the next couple chapters is going to be Ezra's personal journal. That makes sense? So, yes, I'm not arguing the goofiness of it. But, 25, and you, Ezra, are to use the wisdom God gave you to appoint magistrates and judges who know your God's laws to govern all the people in the province west of the Euphrates River. If the people are not familiar with those laws, you must teach them. Anyone who refuses to obey the law of your God and the law of the king will be punished immediately by death, banishment, confiscation of goods, or imprisonment. Taking this serious, all right? And then Ezra's very happy. I think we're going to break off right there. So, what we have, again, we have kind of Ezra's take on the kind of his reflection, I guess would be a safe way. Think of this as like Ezra's diary of the official record in here. But now that we, now that we have come all the way through, we've come all the way through the building of the temple. Next week, now I want to start, because that's the temple. Think about it. They built this magnificent structure. You can tell there's a ton of precious metals in there. I mean, the weights of some of the silver and gold that's in this place. But what does it not have? What is the temple lacking? And they got money. They got the sacrifices. Everything's up and running. And they have no way to defend it. Right? If somebody decides they want to come in and steal the stuff again, who's to stop them? Now, King Artaxerxes and Darius and whoever else can make all the decrees they want and say, hey, you better leave these guys alone. But if some band of marauders come along and decide that they don't want to do that, I don't know if the king's going to be able to get troops there in time. So they need a way to defend it. In steps Nehemiah. And Nehemiah is going to build a defense known as a wall around the city. And we're going to start looking at that next week. Now, we have already read, and we're going to come back to Ezra if we have time. We've already read chapters 1 and 2 of Nehemiah, I believe. Is that right? I think so. We're going to go chapters 3, 4, maybe 5 if we have time. We'll see how far we get. And talk about the building of this wall. Because, did we do 3 also? Okay. I couldn't remember if we did 1 or 2. Yep, that does sound familiar. Okay. Yeah, we'll start with chapter 4, and we'll see how far we get next week. Because what we're going to look at then is the extremes that Nehemiah goes to get this place defended. Because one of the things that's very important, and we're actually seeing that play out in real time right now in our world, is if you can't defend it, you don't keep it. It's as simple as that. And Nehemiah is going to set up something so they can defend the temple. And that's what he's going to build. So, all right. Questions about anything that we've covered tonight? Thank you, guys. Your faces got a little better as we went along. I appreciate that. So. All right. Don is probably just about ready for us upstairs. If you guys want to go up and say hi to the kids real quick and see what he's got going for them up there, that would be awesome. And hope you guys could hear online tonight. Got 4 of you here. Appreciate you coming.